Hey, thanks for coming back to the channel. This is not a rant. Um, it's my observations and my thoughts about the Uvalde, Texas massacre and the events that led up to it, but more importantly, a reinforcement on what is required to prevent such an activity. Now, um, I'll right out gun control is not an answer. That is just not an answer. Um, People control is the answer. And let's talk about now. I have a day job, believe it or not. I have a day job. And in that day job, I spend time every year. I've walking through K-12 school districts and schools, hundreds of them around the country, including in Texas. And since Columbine, what has happened is that these schools have been hardened physically. Um, and when I say hardened, I mean um, very, very difficult, if not impossible, for a visitor or someone who does not have authorized access to enter the school building, and in many cases the school grounds if they have fencing. Um, and it is not draconian, but it sends the message that unless you have the right to be here, you're going to have to go through some security. What is that security? Well, an example I just came back from a week of 10 schools that I went and looked at, and both middle school, high school, elementary. And you go up to the door, there's camera. You can't get in unless the person inside so if one you get buzzed in, but you get buzzed into a sterile chamber. There's another locked door, right? And you wait there until the other person has authorized you, and then they buzz you in through that. Uh, by the way, it's bulletproof glass when you get inside, and then there's a person, a receptionist there, who is behind. It's like a bank, more like uh, a Las Vegas cashier stand, you know, or stop and rob, right? And then you can't get past her or him until someone comes to escort you. I mean, that's the way it should be. Uh, and in the school districts I went to in Texas, that is the way it was, right? And so I have a question about Uvalde and that particular school. Why any door was open so that this shooter could get through, and a, a parent, a parent of the children, uh, was able to get past law enforcement after they decided to show up and enter the school on her own to get her children. That should never have been able to happen if the school was hardened down. No one should have been able to get into that building, into that facility. So obviously, the first question is, why was there access available in the first place? Because in my experience over several years, that I mean, it's you can't just walk into a school today in most places. And if there is a school where you can, you need to fire the school board, and if it's related to the state law or city, you need to get rid of them too, because they are hung up on some other kind of thing that maybe, well, we don't want our kids to feel like they're in prison. Let me say this. I've seen thousands of children in these kinds of hardened schools. They do not think that they're in prison. They're acting just like kids, big ones and little ones, and they're having great fun doing what kids do when they're in school. So don't get hung up on, well, we can't do that because it'll make the kids feel like they're in prison. Any adult that says that is soft, snowflake, sheep, has no concept of the violence that's in the world, and would rather have their child or someone else's die than to be protected. Now, I'll just put that out there. So now let's talk about this other idea. Oh, well, we have armed school resource officers, or SROs. Worthless as tits on a board. That is the most worthless use of money and personnel ever in schools. Ever. Why? With the SROs that I see, if I see them, that's if I see them, usually they're stuck in quote, their office somewhere playing games on the computer or whatever the heck they're doing. Right? And I observed that this week. Right? In a high school, the SRO sitting there playing video games on whatever they were doing. They certainly were not roving around the school providing armed security. The second thing I would say, if you're going to have armed police officers, you need to have two, not one. Two is one is none, right? And there needs to be a roving strategy that allows them to be effective. In reality, all an SRO is in a school is the boogeyman that the teacher can say, well, I'm going to call Officer so-and-so, and they're going to come put the handcuffs on you if you don't do what I say, rather than send them to the principal's office or vice principal's office or whatever. Okay? They are seen as the force that the teacher can use, which is an inappropriate thing for teachers to do. An armed response is not delegated by citizens to schools. We delegate that to police to enforce the law, not enforce the school handbook, right? And if there's something that goes down where a law enforcement officer is needed, well, that's why you call 911. You don't need, and if the violent nature of the school is such, and that was almost always a high school, then you certainly need more than one SRO, right? And you have other issues. But let me come back to an active shooter gaining access, right? There was an unlocked door that this shooter either knew about or discovered and just went in. No one stopped him. No one stopped him. The original story was that an SRO put rounds on him. That is not true. Turns out to be not true. No, there was no one to stop him from going in. Right? Now let's talk about classrooms. Every classroom in the schools that I've been to had some form of what I'll call locking capability on the door into the classroom. Every classroom, when the door's shut, and every door should be shut, is locked. And you can't get it. You can't just walk into a classroom. Right? In this case, classroom door is open. Now, there are people in a lot of schools that are lazy and or they don't like to be controlled. They don't like to have an RFID badge to get into the building. to get into the elevators if they have elevators. They don't like that because it's controlling, right? That's the same mindset that gets kids killed, right? There, we need to treat and protect our children greater than jewelry is protected on Rodeo Drive and in the upscale jewelry stores. And they still have smash and grabs there because people can come in and take stuff because they're stuff. Our children are not stuff. Our children are not stuff, right? Now, the last item, and I am a supporter, unlike some on YouTube and even the prepper and firearm channels. There are some that are not supportive of law enforcement. I spend a lot of time with with law enforcement and around when I do my thing, and I support them. I do not subscribe to the fact that most of them are just as one YouTube person, cosplay bullies, failures in life, and they put on a uniform and now they get to do stuff, and when it gets hard they freeze, right, or they shoot an innocent person. I don't subscribe to that thinking. There might be some that do and that are, but in the case of Parkland and in the case of Uvalde, law enforcement failed. When I say law enforcement, I'm talking about the local jurisdiction, not the Border Patrol, who came later. And it just boggles my mind that a single Border Patrol person was the one that made entry and then took out the shooter. The question that I have is why didn't the first person with a badge and a gun run to gunfire? Well, what I am told and what I've read consistently now is that the site commander, the person who was on site, running the show, was telling people that there were no children at risk and that we needed hostage negotiator, while children were being killed, while shots were being fired. His orders were do not go in. And some that did go in, they received fire from this kid and then backed up. I don't know if they were ever in the military, infantry, or Marines, or whatever, but that's not what happens. If you can see where the fire is coming from, you put rounds on them, right? And if that means you got to take the hits, rather you take the hits than the children take the hits. You see what I'm saying? That did not happen. Here's what my gut is telling me this, right? Those officers, the ones that backed up when they were taking fire, were thinking that this mantra that I hate to hear, but I do hear it. My job is to go home tonight to my family. No, that's not your job. Your job, if you're law enforcement like that, and you're responding like that, your job is to make sure that these citizens go home to their families, even if you have to sacrifice your life for them. If you don't think like that, then you need to have a career change. You need to have a career change, right? Because that's not your job. When it comes down to it, your job is to make sure that those children are safe and that other people are safe, not you. You draw the fire, not let the person do their thing. So what happens next? Because there will be attempts, right? I carry every day. I carry in schools, concealed. I carry on university campuses or campi, concealed, where the law allows. And in some states, In some states, if you have a concealed carry permit in that state or from that state, you can carry in a school. And in several states, you can carry, like a state that I'm in, you can carry on university campuses, public university campuses, in the classroom, right? Which I do. So if that is, I can say this, if it is known that there could be somebody who is concealed carrying, it is part of the calculus of the person who decides they want to assault a particular venue, a particular facility. Yeah. Um, why it took 40 minutes down there in Uvalde, I don't know. That is just incredibly long. Um, for anyone to have the ability to shoot unarmed people, it might as well been Pol Pot or Mao Zedong or something, having people lined up in ditches. I mean, it might as well have been like that, right? To summarize, the facilities, if they are hardened, the hardened strategy must be enforced all the time, whatever that strategy is. Two, if you're going to have armed officers, there should be two, and they should be armed. They should be walking around with long guns, just like they do in European countries. Because the message is, I am not here to be a resource to the teacher because some student is acting out. I am here solely to protect you. And this is the tool I'm going to use to do that. I'll smile, I'll wave, I'll be officer friendly. But at the end of the day, you need to understand that if somebody's going to come in and try to hurt you, I'm going to take them out. That's why you need to see the tool that I'm going to use. And if you're afraid of that, then we got issues with your parents, because you should not be. You should not be, because I'm not using this on you. I'm using this on the person that's going to hurt you. Right? That's the mindset. We need to think like that. We need to make sure that people are not afraid to see the rough men and women who keep you safe in your bed at night and keep your children safe when they're not with you. That's the mindset that we need to have today and going forward. Gun control is theater. It's theater. It doesn't protect anyone. All it does is remove the ability of people like you and I to actually protect someone. I'll finish with an example, right? There's a birthday party going on in West Virginia. This had just happened this week. In West Virginia, right? A guy comes up, he's acting out. They kick him out because it's an outdoor event. They kick him out. He comes back in a car with a long gun, and starts shooting at people from the street with his long gun. A woman, a woman takes her handgun out and kills him. Game over. Not a single person was hurt other than the shooter. Her marksmanship was better than his marksmanship, and she was using a pistol. What did the police say when they arrived? Good job. Good job. That is the scenario. Okay, I'm done. I didn't mean it to be a rant. If it did, I apologize. If you like the content that you find on this channel, please subscribe, hit that bell icon if you see it. And as always, thanks for watching. And please, where you can, carry on.